What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the eCommerce Influence Podcast. My name is Austin Brawner, and I've got a great episode for you today with our guest, Chase Clymer. Chase is the host of the Honest eCommerce Podcast and also co-founder of an agency called Electric Eye. And today we talk about what he's learned from interviewing over 150 different founders, marketers, agency owners at his podcast, as well as some of the common mistakes that he sees e-commerce business owners making with their website, with their advertising. He also goes into some ideas for Black Friday. We talk a lot about testing, what you can and can't do. We talk a lot about how to think about your website in a very growth in your business in a very simplified way. Something called his brand scaling framework, I believe is what it was called. Really, really interesting stuff. This is a very good practical episode with some nice tips and takeaways. I think you guys will enjoy it very, very much. So let's get to the episode. Chase, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to chat today. We got connected through email, and it's always good to talk to somebody who is a fellow podcaster. How did you decide to start the Honest eCommerce Podcast?
I didn't actually decide to start it. My project manager told me to start it because we always had a content play in mind at the agency. We understood just like the underlying, we just knew that content was a thing that we had to do.
Yeah.
And originally we were like writing blogs like most agencies or consultants or whatever, you're like, well, I have to write a blog like once a week. That's what you do. I hate writing, but I can talk. So kind of just switched up to starting to do a podcast and never stopped. And, actually in January of this year, we doubled down on the podcast and started using the same app that we're using right now. Shout out to Riverside. It's the sweetest podcasting recording app. We started using that to kind of add the video element in and really go all in on it. This is actually my first time being a guest on the other side of Riverside, and this thing is snazzy, man.
It's good. So yeah, if you're watching the video, that's how we're doing it. If you're watching the video on YouTube, it's through Riverside. So with your podcast, right, you've been interviewing people in the e-commerce space for how long have you guys been doing it for?
I want to say we're going on 3 years because there's 56 weeks in a year and we're like at 168 episodes at last I checked.
168 episodes. What has been your biggest learning from the podcast or maybe a couple of takeaways from all the interviews that you've done with different founders, different practitioners, marketers?
Yeah. I mean, well, first of all, it just keeps me on my toes, man. I'm like talking to people that are so much smarter than me, and I'm learning on every single episode. And that like truly is in and of itself, it's like a crash course college degree in e-commerce because I'm talking to people that know what they're talking about every week. So that's like that is the super cool thing about it. Another thing that I've learned is I started to really focus on interviewing founders this year. I really like telling kind of the hero's journey through the lens of an e-commerce store and an e-commerce brand. That's like what I really like to do. So we've really kind of gone in on that. And with interviewing all these founders, I'm starting to see like a lot of similarities in their stories, not really similarities in their brands or their products or, what brought them to it, but similarities in like how they got that initial product market fit, how they were testing stuff, which these are things that I think are the most difficult for a founder to really find, especially like an e-commerce founder, because they'll often be like, I have the coolest product ever, and it's like, well, that doesn't matter. Like you got a product market fit does not equal a good product. Like they're completely separate things. But so through interviewing all these founders, I'm finding these little nuggets and tidbits of like some of these concepts that I thought were really hard to explain. And now I'm getting some really, really concrete examples and answers to give to people that just aren't there yet to try to help them along on their journey.
Sure. I mean, I think I've felt the same way. When you interview enough founders, especially e-commerce brands, you start to see like a lot of similarities. What are some of the things you've noticed in these interviews and the repeating themes that you keep giving to other people when they're on their journey?
First and foremost, what I find is surprising is success was never really a driving force beyond just being scared of failure. Like people, when they're launching like more successful brands, when they're launching it, they just wanted to like solve a problem. They didn't necessarily want to become $1 million a year business. They didn't want to have payroll. They just, they just wanted it to be something more than just an idea. These people truly had passion around their products or solving the problem that they wanted to solve. So that is something that, really shines true with a lot of the interviews. Another is a lot of times, these ideas for products are coming out of what's going on in their real life. They were looking for a product and then realized it didn't exist. And then they got extremely passionate about solving that problem and coming to market with a product that solves that problem. So that's like, I would say a third or maybe even, I wish I had better numbers for you here, but like I would guess like a third to half of the founders I've interviewed, that's kind of how they stumbled across their idea. One that was really funny. And have you interviewed Chris from Crossnet?
No, but we are scheduled to have an interview. And it's interesting. I just played Crossnet for 8 hours over a 2-day period. So 4 hours a day over a weekend, over Labor Day weekend at a bachelor party. It was the most fun game. And I'm scheduled to interview him, I think, in a couple of weeks here.
So that was the only example I can come up with of someone who sat down and was like, I'm going to think of a good idea. They, sat down and he'll be on the story. Please subscribe to the podcast and go and listen to that when it comes out, because it's a very, very interesting story. But they were like, this D2C thing, like, we got to come up with a cool product, man. Like, what are we going to do? And they brainstormed it and narrowed it down to that, which was probably the best kind of cram session that he ever had in college.
Oh, it's a super fun game. Yeah. It's like Foursquare plus volleyball in one game, and it's incredibly inclusive. We had like 13 people playing at the same time. It's the only game I've ever played like this, like where you just rotate in, boom, 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 and go all the way around. It's so fun. I can see this thing blowing up. I also am a huge fan of Spikeball, which is the other game that they kind of seems like they took the branding from a little bit. It almost feels like they're related, but I don't think that they actually are.
Well, someone should buy them both and do a roll up.
They do. Pretty high. I bet pretty high valuations on both those things. I feel like they're growing incredibly fast.
Oh yeah.
It's funny. Yeah. I would definitely echo that same sort of thing. A lot of scratching their own itch from the founder's perspective. And yeah, it is interesting when, I've interviewed a lot of people on this show as well. And they're like, yeah, one day we just kind of woke up and we had like 25 employees and we're like, dealing with all these, it's a totally different business than it was. And yeah, it's been 8 years and now we're here. How did you get into the e-commerce space? I was reading a little research that you were touring.
Yeah, I was in a punk rock band and that did not pay the bills. So the whole time I was doing that, I was freelancing, and, I kind of, my first passion was photography. And then I started getting into like editing and then web design, and then more kind of evolved from the creative side of things more into the kind of strategy side of things. And I was like, digital marketing is cool. Like return on ad spend is interesting. Like these concepts were really fun to me. And I started to really kind of get closer to the money, as they'd say. So I was like, I was kind of doing Facebook ads like way back when, before like, even they had some of the pixel events that they have now. I remember kind of looking at all that stuff. But so I was doing that. And then the whole time I was doing that, my co-founder was over at a direct-to-consumer e-commerce brand out of Columbus, Ohio here. It's pretty big. And he left there and he was like freelancing and making every wrong decision in the world. So I was like helping him become a better freelancer. And he was like, hey, like, Facebook ads, I've got all these Shopify stores that need help. And so we were tag teaming a bunch of stuff. And next thing you know, we had an agency.
I mean, it's funny how that works. I think it's an interesting culmination of having success as a freelancer often leads to having an agency. It's one of the ways that, because you end up having more and more people coming in through referrals, and then it's like, well, how do we service these people? Let's grow, let's get bigger and go. And it's an interesting space because I think agencies have the best viewpoint into what's going on, right?
Yeah.
You've got multiple brands. You can see something that works for one, something that works for another. I know you guys talk about something called the brand scaling framework. What is this, and how did you guys develop it through your work at Electric Eye?
Yeah. So what you just said about like, we're working with multiple, like we work with about a dozen brands at a time. So we are learning 12 times faster than your brand is. And so we have probably solved the problem that you're trying to solve already, and we can solve it for you faster, right? Like so that's a cool thing about working with an agency in and of itself. But even back when we were first getting started, back then we kind of had this concept of like the 1-2 punch, right? It was like which was more of an internal term than like something we used with clients, but it was like, all right, it doesn't matter why you reached out to us. If I ask you Socratic questions, which is keep asking why, is what that means, is basically it's going to come down to like, we just want to make more money. We want more sales. Like that's always why people are reaching out to you at the end of the day. And, they have a predetermined, like, we will make more sales if we do this thing. And then that's why they reach out to a consultant. But it's like, well, make sure, like, let's ask why. So oftentimes it was, they wanted to make more sales. So they would, back then, people were oftentimes reaching out and they were like, we want to make more sales through Facebook ads. So like, we're going to put all this money into Facebook ads. And we're like, okay, but math is a thing. Let me walk you through some numbers, right? So back then we were just looking at conversion rate, and that was it really. But basically, like, if you could have the best Facebook advertising agency in the world, which is Electric Eye, by the way. But if your website is garbage, it's not going to help. Like if your website is a terrible user experience, or if it lacks professionalism and the message doesn't match what they find on the website, the best Facebook ad in the world will not sell that product. So what we would often do when we started working with clients is we'd kind of come in and be like, first, we're going to make this website better. Like, we're going to get rid of any sort of, holes in the bucket, as they say, holes in the funnel. Oftentimes that just comes down to making it faster, making it more mobile friendly, making sure the navigation makes sense, getting rid of any sort of like extra stuff that doesn't need to be there. Like, stop confusing your customer, right? So once it's in a better place, you get rid of all the distractions, it's faster, the conversion rate itself is just going to automatically go up. And then it's like, all right, now let's pour some gas on that fire and send more traffic through Facebook ads. So that was like the 1-2 punch way back then. So we've been doing this since day one, but it's evolved over time.
Since day one, what do you mean by that? How long? When did you guys get started?
We are going into year 6, I think. Next month, I think, is year 6. We started in October of a long time ago. I don't even remember. So like, we've been doing this kind of concept of the brand scaling framework since day one, but it's evolved to now we have 3 KPIs that we care about. And those KPIs are conversion rate, like I mentioned earlier, average order value, and then sessions. And we use sessions and not traffic because that is the metric that Shopify tracks in the back end of their store that we want to look at. And we only work with Shopify as like a technology. So that's why we picked that word. So anyways, you take all 3 of those numbers and you multiply them together within like the same time period, and you're going to get basically your sales for that time period, because that's how math works. And so now you have a baseline that you can then kind of track your upside against and then make decisions based upon what your numbers are telling you. So, if you've got a 2% conversion rate, but you know that your website's 5 years old and you've installed 150 different Shopify apps and uninstalled them, and your code looks like spaghetti and the mobile experience is bad, but you still got a pretty decent conversion rate. What that'd tell me as an expert is that people love your product and they'll deal with a bad customer experience to buy your product. So if you give them a better customer experience, more people will buy it faster. Like, your conversion rate will go up. So just take a look at your numbers. You got a 2% conversion rate, $75 average order value, and 100,000 visitors a month. Imagine what that would look like. I don't have a calculator in front of me and I don't have these numbers memorized, which I probably should, because I've done this spiel on a podcast probably a dozen times now.
Well, 2% to 2.5, that's adding 25%, right?
Yeah. So, instead of doing $100,000 a month, you're doing $125,000 a month with no additional ad spend. And that's forever. So that's why investing in a good user experience and like a tailor-made theme is worth it. And then, like, let's just go down the line. You got a $75 average order value, but you have kind of no upsell motivators throughout the funnel at all. And so what those mean is like you're just trying to add more stuff to the cart, but in a way that like the best way to think about this, and this is the kind of exercise that we tell our clients is imagine if your store was a physical retail store, like a coffee shop, and someone's in front of you and they're buying your best seller. What complements that? Because all you're trying to do is be of service to them and like make their experience better. That's how you should think about upsells and cross sells and bundles. So then you start to bake those into the experience because people want to spend money. Like people like to buy stuff, but they don't like to be sold. And sometimes some of those out of the box apps and stuff, it's jarring and it like takes you out of the experience. And that's not a good customer experience. And that's why those tend to fail. But when you can, do it tastefully and it seems of service, then people will just start dropping hot money everywhere. Like they love to buy stuff. One that I really liked, a masterclass, I think, in kind of like how they operate like upsells, cross sells, and bundles is Merino wool, the Merino shirts brand, Unbound Merino. That's what they're called.
Yeah,
they have some really, really cool, slick motivators all over the place. So what I mean by motivators is like they've got like on their product page, on their flagship t-shirt page, they've got like a little subtle upsell into a bundle. Like right on the product page, the cart's got these like free shipping motivators, like, you spend $7 more, you get free shipping, like all those things. They've got upsells like in the cart, in the checkout, post purchase, and they all work. Just making them work and look good is a little more difficult. But we like to tackle all that stuff because if you can sell, if it costs you $25 to acquire a customer through Facebook and Instagram advertising, which is a realistic number in 2021, would you rather make $75 off that person with your margin of say 60%? You've probably only put, $40 in your pocket, or would you like to make $90 off that person because you sold them an extra pair of socks? So that makes your returns better. So
much of what it is actually just like it's simple, consistent improvements, right? Yeah. There's a guy, I don't know if do you know who Drew Sanaki is? Drew's been on the podcast a couple of times. He's been in he's been old e-commerce guy. He's been in the game for a long time. He runs nerdmarketing.com, is the CEO of Auto Anything. And one of his big things he's always says is it's pressure over time. It leads to success in those different fields. Like each one of those levers you push on a little bit and then push on the other one, keep doing it. They all work together. And a year and a half, 2 years later, you got a completely different company. And then you're competing at a completely different level. What do you find? Like, what are the biggest mistakes people are making on their website? I know you say you come in there and you start looking at simplifying things, removing apps, that sort of a thing. But what's just like a common almost every single website thing that you can point to is like, if you've got a website, a Shopify store, you're probably doing this, and you guys have consistently go the opposite direction.
I have three that come to mind. So first one is you have too many apps, and don't argue with me on that. You probably do. The more
apps are fun.
Yeah.
Apps are exciting.
Yeah.
Apps change the game it feels like a silver bullet.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Werewolves don't exist, and neither do silver bullets. Like, it's not going to fix anything. You need to, so when it comes to apps, and this is like what we do within our kind of, when we first start working with people, is we actually audit their apps and we pull it into a spreadsheet and we go, do you actually use this? What problem is it solving? Does this do your customers care about this thing? Could this be custom built into your theme? What is the negative impact on the page load on this thing? And then you weigh all those things together and it's like, do we actually need that thing? You have no idea how many times we get in there and people are like, I don't even know what that is. We haven't used that in 2 years. And we're like, why is it here then? Get rid of it. And then also the code's still there. So when you install an app on Shopify, it injects a bunch of code into your theme.
Yeah.
And then the second you press uninstall, that app no longer has access to your store. That code is still there. So repeat
still
this,
weighing it down.
Yeah. So repeat this, a dozen times over a dozen apps over a couple of years of whatever theme that you were using. It looks like spaghetti, and no developer will clean that up because that is just a wild. You're pulling at a thread, the sweater's going to come apart, and you're going to break stuff. So that's usually around the time that people are talking to us, and then we have to kind of walk them through. If we fix what we have, these are the issues that we're going to have. Or we can take that same amount of time and just start over. And so you got to, walk through all those thought exercises and figure out if that's worthwhile. But going back to your original question. So there's one, too many apps. Two, another common mistake that we see is that the customer journey of their website, it doesn't make any sense. And this is usually because they're too close to their brand and their product, and they haven't really tried to experience their website from the perspective of someone that has no clue what it is. The most simple way to approach this is like the goal of your homepage is to get people to the next step, which is usually either like your flagship product, your like flagship first offer bundle thingy, or your subscription page of your subscription company, or to like a collection page where they can kind of browse and find whatever they like that's going to fit them. So let's just say it's collection because that's a longer funnel, right? So it's like homepage to collection page. The collection page now needs to like help me get to what I want as fast as possible. And what I often see is like filtering, tagging, and like kind of how I can drill down into a product that I want, especially on larger SKU count scores, is non-existent from the user experience. On desktop, that's semi-annoying. I can scroll and potentially find something by eye that I want. But on mobile, which is probably where 75% plus of your traffic is shopping,
it's a killer.
If I can't drill down to a black t-shirt in a size large from the top of the I'm gonna go somewhere else. You know what I mean? And that's what half of your traffic's thinking. So the just the navigation structure and the filtering and the tagging and how all that stuff plays together, that's usually a common pain point that people are experiencing when we come along. And you can do this yourself. You don't need to hire us. It's just like export everything as a Excel file, tag everything appropriately, and then build out, either you can go custom or there are solutions out there that will work. But you can't get as custom with them, but like product filter and search can help you get better filtering going. And Searchinize is another one. They both have pros and cons to them. We custom build the solution for all of our themes, but sometimes you just aren't there yet, and you want to use an out-of-the-box solution. But yeah, like getting that navigation structure down and the filtering and stuff, that's usually a common problem.
That's one of those things that I think the reason it's a common problem is, like you said, you're too close to the site, and you don't realize what it's like for somebody who has never gone through it. It may be very intuitive for you to bang through it on your phone or on your desktop because you know the website. The quickest way to learn if you've got that problem is user testing. Mm-hmm. Either go to usertesting.com or something like Conversion Crimes, or just have a friend who doesn't go through your website go through it on their phone and watch them and have them talk through.
Have your mom do it.
Exactly. That's my most successful user tests have come from my mom.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, can you please go through this site? I'm going to watch you and take notes. And usually, like, I had my favorite one was I had a client, and I gave the website on my phone to my mom, and it took her, I think it was like 25 seconds before she was completely stuck. Couldn't go anywhere. And we took that, and I was like, okay, this is the problem. It was actually a software app that allowed you to design greeting cards. And all we did was we worked on that, and we made it better and better and better. And that was the key to like doubling and tripling their sales, was just making that better. And then after she tried it again, and she got stuck after like 3 minutes, and then we fixed it again. And it was very simple, but incredibly effective.
Yeah, I mean, user tests are an amazing way to kind of get some insights there. But like with that, I think that you need to understand when you start to get into testing and into like A/B tests and stuff like that, is you need to kind of have the data to back it up, and you can't iterate as fast as like $1 million brands can barely do A/B testing.
I totally agree. I think that's a huge mistake, thinking you can test everything, especially at the small level. There's no chance.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say, in my opinion, the way that I kind of view things, and before I go down this, I'll finish the first question you had, which was 3 things. So the third one is, this isn't really on the website, but it's mostly like when brands are starting to partner up with us, it's usually a small team, and there honestly is just a lack of overall strategy behind why are we making the decisions we're making on the website. And it isn't just like we're changing the conversation from like, I heard this is a good idea, to we are doing this because this reason. So, just a lack of foundational kind of e-commerce knowledge, which is kind of like, these brands are creators. They're trying to solve these problems. They were never, they're not Facebook experts. They're not user experience experts. They don't know what a pixel is. So there's some education that there's a lot of education.
If they don't know what a pixel is, they're probably, they got to learn quickly.
Yeah. But there's a lot of education that needs to go on. So, that's probably the number one thing, actually, like hands down, is just lack of a strategy and then a trust in someone to help them kind of get to the next level. And there's oftentimes, an uphill battle, and there's a lot of conversations that need to be had and kind of just educate them on why you should do things certain ways. But moving on to kind of...
Let's go to the testing, because I want to talk about testing for a second, because I got a funny story about this. I went to a conference, a conversion rate optimization conference, and they brought in this like big name speaker. I think it was the head of Instagram, like head of acquisition at Instagram. Big position, flew this guy in, and he brought this deck up, and most of the people in the crowd were probably somewhere, running businesses between like $3 and $10 million. He brings up this whole deck and everyone's like, awesome, and we're going to learn so much. And the guy was talking about what tests they ran and like their big winners at Instagram. And it was like, we tested this color here and it made this boost. And, we tested this. And he was like, we could test, I think it was like 3 times a day or something like that, because the amount of traffic that they had hit statistical significance. And I'm sitting there being like, there's no way any of this stuff is going to be relevant to anyone in this audience, because Instagram has billions of users, people going on it. It's just a completely different game. And for the average brand owner, I mean, how often are you guys running tests? How often can you actually, if you run a brand that's doing $2 million in sales, reasonably test something?
Dude, like once a month, maybe. It comes down to sessions, and then like you can do it beforehand. So let me kind of walk back my statement. So if you're $0 to $1 million a year, and you're like kind of in that startup phase, and you're working out the kinks on product market fit, like A/B testing is on the horizon, but ignore it. Like, who cares? Just do best practices, and they will serve you well. One, you kind of get into that scaling phase of, going 0 to 1's the hardest. Going from $1 million a year to $10 million a year is so much easier. Once you kind of hit that scaling phase, then, A/B testing is a reality, but it's going to come down to it's going to be like quarterly tests, and then like monthly tests, and then like bi-weekly, and then like weekly, but it's like you have to be more on the closer to the 8-figure mark for that weekly thing to actually matter. Or
have like a low average order value, and, so you got more people coming in. If you're selling $1,200 stuff, you're still going to struggle.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The higher your AOV, and none of these KPIs exist in a bubble. They all intermingle, and, it's tied back to your goals. If you want to do A/B testing, like it comes down to how many orders are you getting a month. That's actually the KPI that you have to go against. It doesn't matter what your traffic is.
What are some things that you're like really, really excited about right now? Things you've tested recently, things you're seeing. This could be either on Facebook or on websites, or even dreaded apps that you were kind of railing against.
Well, I'm not against all apps. Let me clarify that.
I know.
A lot of our top partners are amazing Shopify apps. But I mean, the question you asked, like what came to mind before you started to kind of narrow down, is Shopify's released so much cool stuff into the actual Shopify platform, like the front end. Shopify front end has I think this is the most updates that the front end's gotten in like the longest time. So Online Store 2.0 just came out, and that is game changing, because that was like a limiting belief that a lot of people had around Shopify, is like all the product pages look the same. You can't customize anything. I was like, well, you can. It's just more difficult. And Shopify heard it, and they had to completely re-engineer how the framework worked and all that stuff. That's why it took so long. But now it's out, and so now you have this thing called sections everywhere. So if you build a theme the right way, your clients can probably maintain it on their own. Trust me, they'll find a way to break it, because that's just how it works. But usually they can kind of maintain things on their own, and they can push and pull and manipulate sections around, which is a lot easier for brands that are a little more tech savvy and kind of understand wanting to change their marketing message and change their offer and all that stuff, where on the various pages on the website where it exists without tagging in a more technical partner. But those, we're so excited about that. And we're retrofitting Online Store 2.0 into basically every one of our clients' store right now.
How long does that process take?
That'd be a question for Mike, and I he'll probably hear this and yell at me on Slack, but I think we're doing a lot of these brands are on
depends on
custom,
the size. Yeah,
they're on custom stores that we've built, so we know how to add it into our framework. Adding it into something we've never dealt with before is,
right. It's a challenging question. It's one of those questions that again, every site is a little bit different depending on, again, what spaghetti is in their code, I think is what you're talking about. That's it. That's really interesting. Anything else from the Shopify front end that you're excited about? Things that people might not know about if they're not on the forefront of like development?
Yeah. I mean, they're adding in this new section soon. It's not out now. But basically they're adding in a content element to Shopify's backend, which to me, I came from WordPress before I got went into the Shopify space. But in WordPress, there's this app that's basically used as a catch-all to solve everything called Advanced Custom Fields, I think.
Yep.
And it's a custom data block that you can use to manipulate anything, right? So an example would be like, we build out a page on a website, and it's not products, but it's like employees, right? And then you make an employee block, and the employee block is just like the name and their picture and their favorite type of taco. And then you add more employees, and then this page automatically adds them in, right? And
our entire website's built like this. I'm very familiar. It's a very cool feature on WordPress.
That's coming to Shopify.
That's awesome.
It's not advanced custom fields, but the way that the way I heard it, I was like, that we can do this. We can solve any problem now. This is going to be really cool, and it's going to be really user friendly for our clients.
It'd be like an example that works really well is like testimonials for a Shopify store. Like testimonials can be a pain in the ass to update unless, you've got kind of two types of testimonials. People often will have like a Yotpo or a stamped type thing that automatically updates and that's dynamic. Mm-hmm. But then they also usually have testimonials on their website. The way it works with the advanced custom fields in WordPress is you just put in a new picture, new testimonial, and it updates.
Yeah, you just click a button and it says new testimonial, and then you just add the stuff, and then it puts it in there. So it's not That's dynamic. Awesome. It doesn't automatically do it itself, but it allows you to have it allows a non-technical person to update content on a website and have it not break anything.
That's great. That's actually huge. And will save time, energy, and money.
So why I'm excited about it is there's going to be people smarter than me that use it to solve insanely complex problems on Shopify through the app ecosystem. And there's just going to be, I can only imagine what some smart developer comes up with using this, this new feature they're going to launch.
I know we're messing with you about the apps that you are excited about, things that you feel like, okay, so when you go through that spreadsheet, that Excel sheet, and you're looking at apps, we have a similar idea in our business where we ask ourselves the question, are we using it? Yes, no. If yes, is this the best app for the use that we are using it for? If no, then we'll find something different or whatever. But as you're going through this and you're auditing, what are the consistent apps, the ones that maybe people don't know about as much? Not the Klaviyo, the normal stack. Anything else that you see that's like a consistent winner that is that you might even recommend to people if they don't have it?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I wish that my project manager was on this call, because he is the one that's in the trenches, and he is he's got a list of these are the ones we will use in his head, and he'll fire an app like that if their customer service drops off or a better one comes up. Yeah. But it's we always weigh the pros and cons of is this thing worth having, and it usually comes down to is the functionality beyond just making something look good or a pop-up or something like that. It's for reviews. Like, don't custom build a review solution. That's like
doesn't make sense.
That's dumb. Yeah. Use Klaviyo, right? Just use Klaviyo. Like, you're not building your own email software. A lot of, if the functionality is kind of beyond that, like, you want to use the best in.
Do you guys use something called Rebuy?
Yeah, we're very familiar with Rebuy. I think we're partners with them.
That one seems interesting, right? That one seems like that's one of those that, in my mind, crosses the line where do you do it custom in-house or use something like Rebuy? And my understanding is that Rebuy offers a lot of the motivators you were talking about, where it allows you to be able to more easily add some sort of an upsell or a cross-sell. Do you guys use that, or are you often creating your own motivators in-house?
So we've got a few of them built into our framework already, but for more robust ones like post-purchase upsells, like tying that into the same order is a big undertaking. And it's like, just use something that already works. Because you can do all this stuff custom, and at a certain point, most big brands do, because they have, someone in finance like looking over every single penny that's spent, and they'll do a cost analysis and say, like, we can pay for this to get custom developed and it will pay for itself in 16 months. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at a certain point you can bring some of this stuff in-house, but on the flip side of it, like, younger brands, they can afford to pay an extra $100, $250 a month for something that already works, as opposed to, cutting a $25,000 check to build that custom solution. And
it also gives you an opportunity. One of the things I love about the Shopify apps ecosystem is it allows you to like test certain things to see if the concept might work for your brand. And if it does, well, then you can double and triple down on it.
Yeah.
And build it even more. Chase, has been awesome. I know I want to be cognizant of time here and kind of wrap up a little bit. Last question. If you were in my shoes today, what would you have asked yourself that I did not?
Ooh, well, if I were doing this interview, I'd be like, before we end, do you have any advice for our listeners on Black Friday and Cyber Monday?
All right, let's do it. What do you got? What do you got for people listening? Black Friday, Cyber Monday is coming up. What's on your mind? What's some advice you've got?
We are already, with all of our clients that we're doing their Black Friday, Cyber Monday marketing, we're already started. Like, we've literally already started with all of our clients.
This is being recorded in September.
Yeah. So we send out estimates/statements of work before September every year. It says, this is what our holiday success package is going to look like. This is what we want to do with you. Like, the faster you sign this, the more strategy calls we can have. Like, let's start talking.
What is included in that success packet? Like, what do you think is part of that success packet?
So what we offer is, so we internally, so there's the design development side of the business, and then there's the marketing and advertising side of the business. So what we wanted oftentimes with our clients, we're handling both kind of their retention/owned marketing. So that's like email and SMS. And then we're doing like their paid traffic, Facebook, Google, all that stuff. So what we want to do is, like, we're going to work in tandem with whoever's in charge of the account over at the brand. And we're going to make sure that every campaign is hitting all the touch points. It's the same messaging across the board. We start talking about content calendars. We start telling them, like, go build out all this creative so we can have it for the things. Like, we come to the table with like a whole bunch of campaigns that we want to do. And it's like,
so if you're taking it from the brand perspective, what should people be doing then?
Yeah. So first and foremost, your whoever's doing paid advertising for you should be talking to whomever's doing your email marketing for you. Like, they should be friends and they should be sharing ideas. And if they're not, find another agency or contractor that will. Because you need those need to be on the same exact page, especially during the holiday season. Your offers need to be in sync, and the stuff needs to go out at relatively the same time. Because I shouldn't see an offer on Facebook for, buy one, get one free, but my email offer is 50% off a purchase of $100 or more. Like, everybody should be on the same page.
That would be a nightmare.
Ooh, yeah, it would be a nightmare. And I didn't make those numbers up. So from a brand perspective, is like, make sure everybody's talking and be talking about it sooner rather than later. Like, we want to have our goal is to have everything planned out before we even get into November. And we're like, we know what's happening. For our clients on Plus, we got this stuff scheduled out already within Shopify, within Klaviyo, built out in the back end of Facebook ads. And we're like, cool. We just have to kind of roll with the punches here. So that's definitely kind of the way to look at it. As far as like what your offer looks like, people try to overcomplicate it. I think just make it simple. Like I should be able to understand it like by reading it once. If I have to read it twice, it's too complicated.
I love buy more, get more offers. Like simple though, right? Where it's like get 10% off if you buy $100 worth, 20% off if you buy $200, 30% off if you buy $300. Like those are consistently, anecdotally as well, have been big winners for a lot of people that we work with because they hit two of those goals. One, they're often incredibly simple, and two, they motivate higher cart value. And
absolutely.
And so I often think like, is there a way to keep it really simple, but also motivate high cart value? If you can do that, those are things that typically work well.
Yeah. What I'm, saying, here's an example of what not to do is like t-shirts are 25% off, hats are buy one, get one free, and you get a free pair of socks with every sneaker purchase. That is so convoluted.
So confusing.
Yeah.
That may work though afterwards in like a 12 days of Christmas type deal where you feature one per day. Mm-hmm. That sort of stuff might be a better fit for later on when you're like, there's an interesting, I forget which company it was. It was a Bed Bath & Beyond. I'm not sure, but they had a grid of like the beginning of December, and it said like Monday through Saturday, every single day had a different deal, and you knew what you were going to get. It had like on the top of their email, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it told you all the deals. And on Monday, they emailed about one deal. Tuesday, they emailed about the next deal. And it was like 20% off all rugs, 20% off all bathroom stuff. That's interesting. That's
a way to do it. Like if you want to get more creative with that and you guys have the bandwidth internally to do that as a brand, like that's cool. But what they did successfully there versus what would be a nightmare if you didn't do this is they told you what deals were coming. So you could, as a customer, could self-select what you wanted to buy, as opposed to being in the dark and then like realizing like, you know what, I actually wanted to buy that deal on Tuesday and now it's Thursday and now I'm mad.
Exactly. And you're just like blowing up with just different random ideas and deals. Chase, this is awesome. I really like this. Some of the stuff you're talking about here. You've got obviously your podcast. Where's the best place if people want to learn more? Do you have an episode that you would recommend people to go listen to, like an all-star episode?
Oh man. Well, if you want to get a taste for what the podcast is just go listen to any episode where I'm interviewing a founder, which more recently is like almost every podcast is usually me interviewing a founder. That's kind of what I like to do. I really like to tell that kind of like the hero's journey from the perspective of an e-commerce brand. If you want to learn more about our agency and myself in the form of a podcast episode, episode 100, I interview my business partner and we just talk about kind of just starting an agency and just e-commerce and, it's a very fun episode and it kind of, shows you what's going on behind the curtain, over at Electric Eye. So that's an interesting episode to check out. But if anything I said today resonates with you, or you just want to learn more about like what we actually do over at Electric Eye, you can just go to electriceye.io, click contact, and you'll schedule an intro call with literally me. I'll be the guy you talk to.
Cool. Chase, thanks so much, man, for hopping on here. It's been great. Good luck as we go into the holiday season. I'm sure your time will probably be ramping up. The whole team will be ramping up. Hope you guys can stay sane and keep things rolling.
The team gets extremely busy. What happens during the holidays is nobody wants to talk to anybody about starting a project. So I have a great Q4.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Thanks a lot for having me.